The Georgia Innocence Project is an organization that focuses on freeing people who are wrongfully incarcerated. The first case we look at is that of Dennis Perry in 1985. Harold and Thelma Swain were shot and killed by an unidentified white man in a church in Camden, Georgia. He left his glasses at the scene, but the police were not able to connect them to any of the suspects. Suspects were hard to narrow down because the descriptions of the perpetrator were widely different by each of the four women to provide information to the officers working on the case. Phone lines were clogged with hundreds of anonymous tips after the event. In desperation to convict the culprit, there was a $25,000 reward put on the line. That reward persuaded the churchwoman to testify against the innocent Dennis Perry. Next is the case of Johnny Lee Gates. In 1976, a white woman was raped and murdered in her own apartment, located in Muskogee County, Georgia. Despite a white man being seen fleeing from the scene, fondling the body, and accurately and willfully confessing to the crime, prosecutors failed to indict him. They waited until Johnny Lee Gates, with little lawful literacy, was accused by two criminals seeking leniency. Prosecutors secured a coerced confession from him, planted a fingerprint, impaneled an all-white jury, and gave him the death penalty. He served over 43 years in prison since 1977, before finally being exonerated and freed on May 15, 2020, thanks to the work of the Georgia Innocence Project. So how did the Georgia Innocence Project free these two wrongfully imprisoned men? Let's look at the evidence. Dennis Perry had a solid alibi. Although there were no records of employment due to his employer shutting down before the trial, Perry would have been hundreds of miles away from the crime scene. One of the churchwomen who claimed to have spoken with the shooter could not even identify Perry as the shooter out of a lineup. And 3, the shooter was believed to be using glasses during the incident, which Perry does not use. Unfortunately, after Perry's interview, which was not recorded, he made the mistake of answering hypothetical questions about the couple's murder. From these statements, 2 different officers testified against him, calling his answers a confession. In the Johnny Lee Gates case, blood was found at the crime scene next to the body that was type B, but both Gates and the victims had type O blood. There was also a confession using details only the real perpetrator would have known, that was given to police and never prosecuted. Trials and exoneration. During the 3rd week of July, the 19th, in 2021, Dennis Perry was exonerated after over 20 years of his life were stolen. His exoneration was the result of triumphing through systemic obstacles. To quote, "The court refused to consent to a new trial for Perry and instead sought to delay by requesting that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation reopen the investigation of the 1985 murders. As a result, Georgia Innocence Project King and Spalding filed an extraordinary motion for new trial, EMNT, in April 2020 and requested a hearing as soon as possible, given that Perry remained in prison amid the COVID-19 pandemic. It was not until a New Brunswick Judicial Circuit District Attorney, Keith Higgins, that reviewed Perry's case based on the principles of justice and eventually dismissed Perry's charges in 2021. This was only after going through the district attorney, Jackie Johnson, who continued to delay to motion to reopen Perry's case until Higgins effectively took over. The attorney in Johnny Lee Gates' trial systemically struck every black individual from being on the jury, resulting in an all-white panel of jurors for Johnny Lee Gates, who biasly chose the death penalty trial. It's practically a miracle, but thankfully these 2 men are free to rebuild their lives.
I've been here my entire life, that, you're guilty if you're black, regardless. Once they stop you You don't even have to put the handcuffs. Once you stop, you guilty, you know. Johnny's project mean to me, it mean a lot, but it mean more to me that they still fight for other guys. Me, I'm past this now. There are still guys and I still screaming, still beating on the door, still asking for justice, still asking for somebody to hear them. Yes.